now we have a phone interview with Kun Niwat Kanchanapoumin, the president of the Thai Bond Market Association. สวัสดีค่ะ
Good afternoon, Kun Niwat.
Good afternoon, Kun Nilachara and Kun Pasula.
Right. Thank you. Well, in the first 2 months of this year, foreign investors have been net buyers of some 200 billion baht of Thai bonds. According to you, why do you think they're interested in this so much?
Well, first of all, because there is the investor, now the foreign investor look for some secure assets, right? Which Thai bond is one of the kind of the secure asset that they are interested because of two of the reasons: our Thai economy and also the economy in Europe, the crisis in Europe that's still there. So one of the investor, especially foreign investor, look after for all around the emerging market in Asia for invest in there for their investment.
Right.
That's a reason. And also, if you look at the number of investment that they did, that's the figure that you just mentioned, around 200 billion, which in this 200 billion, a quarter of 200 billion is a long-term bond, and the other 3/4 is a short-term. The reason is a lot of inflow into this market because of our currency exchange. That's another reason, which you can see from the mid of January. Our exchange is from US to Thai baht is around 31.8.
Right.
Now it's 30.6. So it's just 1 month they can gain from the exchange for around 4%. That was another reason that a lot of investment flow into Thailand at this moment.
So between the corporate bonds and government bonds, Kun Niwat, which products are more attractive to the foreign investors?
Of course, the foreign investor, when they invest in any assets, the most important of their investment is a liquidity. That means if they want to invest and if they want to exist, they should be able to exist. So for the corporate bond, the size of the corporate bond normally is quite small, around 10 billion, which is considered small for the foreign investor. So the most valuable for the foreign investor will be government bond. I would say that.
Well, the government plans to run a deficit spending of 400 billion baht this fiscal year, and it's actually intends to create a massive debt of 350 billion baht to tackle the flood situation. So for that, the government will have to issue bonds to raise the money. So do you think that this would lead to a massive influx of government bonds into market?
Well, there will be the extra ordinary. That means the government bond that issue in this year, we can anticipate that it will be more than the past. But however, for the domestic saving is still a lot. So the demand in the domestic still already still a lot. So even the government going to issue that 750 billion baht in this year, I still believe that they still have a demand on that, so it shouldn't have any effect on the yield curve.
Right, I see. Kun Niwat, how do you see the prospects of Thai bond market throughout this year?
Okay, I can see the growth in the Thai bond market, not only in the government bond, but also on the corporate bond that going to have a growth more than 10% in this year.
Right.
Which at this moment we have a corporate bond at around 1.3 trillion. That's outstanding, which we can expect that it could be 1.5 trillion at the end of this year.
Well, Kun Niwat, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye. So Export, Import or Exim Bank of Thailand is bracing for any problems arising from the recent decision by the Financial Action Task Force, a global financial watchdog, to place the country on its watch list, which could have an adverse effect on small exporters. The bank also pledges to provide more loans to Thai interests wanting to invest in Myanmar and other countries. The Thai Exim Bank President Kanit Sukontaman said yesterday that the FATF move has not yet affected the bank or its customers, but the bank is ready to provide information if counterparties abroad request anything related to the issue. Kanit was referring to the FATF's decision to place Thailand and 14 other nations on its watch list, calling for the countries to fully address their perceived deficiencies in the fields of combating money laundering and financial terrorism. However, large firms may not be affected due to their good reputation of doing business for a long period, but a small firm might face difficulties in conducting export-import businesses in the future. Kanit predicts that as the Thai authorities are committed to complying with international standards by putting in place 2 new pieces of legislation, problems should not arise. He also said Exim Bank this year would work with commercial and state-run banks to provide loans to Thai investors planning to invest in Myanmar, as a neighboring country is opening up for foreign investment. Outstanding Exim Bank lending to the Burmese government is currently about 2 billion baht, and the country has never defaulted on its repayments. Moreover, the bank no longer needs an interest subsidy from the government, as it has restructured the Myanmar lending by borrowing long-term funding to cover the cost. Referring to the controversial loan involving the sale of equipment to the Myanmar government by the telecom business of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. And meanwhile, the bank this year will mainly promote Thai's small and medium-sized enterprises through loan extension, export credit guarantees, and training programs.
Now, Thailand's cross-border trade increased by 15% last year due to closer cooperation under the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement or AFTA and the liberalization of Myanmar markets. Deputy Director General of the Foreign Trade Department, Pongpan Jianviriyapan, said yesterday, cross-border trade continues to play a more important role for Thailand with closer economic cooperation ahead of the ASEAN Economic Community Agreement. Pongpan shared that more ASEAN members, especially Cambodia, Laos and Myanmar, are reducing tariffs. She forecast that cross-border trade with Myanmar would increase significantly this year as the country has opened up its market and plans to open more border checkpoints with Thailand. Thailand expects cross-border trade will surge beyond 1 trillion baht this year. Trade with 4 countries bordering the kingdom, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos and Malaysia, grew 15.6% to 899.78 billion baht last year. Exports to this nation were worth 587.35 billion baht, up by 20.7% from the previous year. Imports rose 7.1% to 312.42 billion baht, while Thailand enjoyed a trade surplus of 274.93 billion baht with its neighbors last year. Malaysia accounted for almost 65% of cross-border trade, followed by Burma with 17%, Laos with 11% and Cambodia at 7%. Total trade with Malaysia rose 12.7% to 560.65 billion baht. Exports grew 18.4% to 379 billion baht, while imports were 181.29 billion baht, up by 2.3%. Two-way trade with Myanmar was up 14.3% to 157.59 billion baht. Shipments improved 19.2% to 60.59 billion baht, while imports increased 11.5% to 96.99 billion baht. Thailand's long-standing trade deficit with Myanmar is due to import of natural gas. Thai exports to Laos also improved by 27.6% to 81.79 billion baht, while imports surged 26.7% to 29.22 billion baht. Shipments to Cambodia grew 28.4% to 65.6 billion baht, while imports improved by 14.1% to 4.91 billion baht.
Let's look at some regional headlines. Well, despite prevailing global economic uncertainties, Malaysia's total foreign direct investment inflows sprung a surprise and climbed to 32.9 billion ringgit last year, eclipsing the pre-crisis level of 29.1 billion ringgit achieved in 2007. International Trade and Industry Minister Datuk Seri Mustafa Mohamad said the manufacturing sector accounted for the largest share of FDI inflows, comprising 50.1%, followed by the services sector with 27.3% and mining and quarrying at 22.2%. Brazil's Vale Group, the world's second largest mining company, Asean Technologies Incorporation and Infineon Technologies are among the foreign companies that expanded their operations in Malaysia last year. About 72% of FDI came from Asian countries, with Japan topping the list with 10.1 billion ringgit, followed by South Korea at 5.1 and Singapore at 2.47, while US contributed 2.5 and Saudi Arabia with 2.17 billion ringgit. With the intensified efforts to attract investments, he hoped the country could achieve similar numbers this year. Data released by the Malaysian Industrial Development Authority showed total investments approved in the manufacturing, services and primary sectors leaping at 40.7% to 148.6 billion ringgit on the back of the 4,964 projects, comparing with the 105.6 billion ringgit in 2010. Mustafa said the domestic investments in 2011 continued to dominate the approved investments, accounting for 55.4%, or about 82.3 billion ringgit of the total approved investments, while foreign investments totaled 66.3 billion ringgit. The manufacturing sector accumulated a total of 846 projects valued at 56.1 billion ringgit, an increase of 18.8% from 47.2 billion ringgit recorded in 2010, while the services sector recorded investments totaling 64.4 billion ringgit, surging by 75.5% from 36.7 billion ringgit previously. Sarawak attracted the most approved investments at 14.35 billion ringgit, followed by Penang with 14.04 billion ringgit and Sabah at 13.68 billion ringgit. And meanwhile, he said the country had surpassed targets for realized private investments by achieving 94 billion ringgit in realized investments in 2011, exceeding the 83 billion ringgit target set previously. He said he hoped the country could achieve the target of 115 billion ringgit in annual average realized private investments set under the 10th Malaysia Plan. Bank Islam chief economist Azrul Azwar Ahmad Tajuddin said it was a good thing to see a revival in private investments with the country surpassing targets set. But however, the private investment share to gross domestic product ratio is still at low levels despite the revival of private investments. He said before the Asian financial crisis, share of private investment to GDP took between 20 to 30%, and just before the crisis hit, it was at a peak of 35%. However, currently it was hovering at about 11% only. He also added, although the data presented is very clear, he would like to see the data that shows FDI inflows by state. RAM Holdings Group Chief Economist Dr. Yi Kim Leng also echoed the same sentiments that said fresh data should help boost investor sentiments given that the FDI inflows were still present despite the perceived economic slowdown. He added lastly that this points to Malaysia's ability to attract foreign investments. However, they still have to see in relation to the overall FDI inflows of other countries and compare the share with them.
Now, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation HSBC has ranked Vietnam 7 out of 10 countries seen as having the best prospect for long-term growth. It also forecast that the nation could become Asia's next big electronics hub. The announcement made on the financial news website CNBC.com forecasts how the economic landscape will change during the next 40 years. The bank projected the country's annual growth at 5.2%, with its GDP rising to $451 billion by 2050. It said that Vietnam was the world's second largest exporter of rice and agricultural exports. However, this was rapidly changing as the government moved to liberalize and diversify the economy. The HSBC report said that while state-owned enterprises contributed 40% of the country's GDP, overseas investment had been increasingly sharply since the country became part of the World Trade Organization in 2007. Vietnam's low-cost manufacturing base had attracted a wave of foreign investors, particularly in the retail, clothing, and technology sectors, making it a cheaper alternative to China. Intel, the first international technology company to make a major investment in the country 6 years ago, has helped raise Vietnam's profile as an investment destination. A long list of companies, including Samsung, Canon and Foxconn, have followed, investing millions of dollars into developing manufacturing operations. According to the HSBC report, analysts said this was helping to lay the foundations for Vietnam to become Asia's next big electronics manufacturing hub.